Welcome to 10,000 Miles. Today's guest is Alec Sailer. Alec is a PGA certified professional golf coach who works for Altus Performance. It's a golf facility that originated out of Dallas, Texas, but they have sites in Europe, China, and another one in Florida and Orlando, which is where Alec currently works. I met Alec about a year ago as he was coaching my nephew, Jack. Alec is a man beyond his years. You'll hear him talk about this fire and ice that he has inside of him. It's a very interesting blend, sort of the yin and yang of his personality. And we'll talk about where the fire has been a pro and a con and where the ice has been the same. Most importantly, he's very insightful, very patient, very, very talented. I'm excited for you to learn more about Alec. So let's dive in. Hey folks, thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via Value for Value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening. Alec, good morning and welcome to 10,000 Miles. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Vic. How about yourself?
I am doing great. You know, I've had a batch of old geezers on this podcast, and from my former guests, they're going to be massively offended by hearing that. Yeah, I'm one of the old geezers, so you know, I'm in the group. So not only am I excited to talk to you because I've got a lot of respect for you, but I'm excited to bring some youthful perspective to the show today, which is important because you know, you want to be relevant. And if people I'm expecting a youthful audience, it's nice to hear not only what happens, you know, multiple decades down the road, but what's going on maybe a decade ago or even right now. So thank you for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate the kind words. Thanks for having me. And it's funny, you call me youthful. I got more gray hair now than I've ever had, having just turned 30, but appreciate all the kind words.
That's what happens from coaching people.
Oh, please.
Yeah. So Alec, backstory for the audience here. I met Alec just about a year ago, gave some golf instruction to my nephew, Jack, at a pretty elite facility. I'll save a lot of that for his own introduction. There's a lot I know about Alec. The thing I'd like to tell the audience is that he has a way of communicating in general, but very specific to golf instruction, even more where the laser focus is. That is very inviting, welcoming, and easy to understand. And I will tell you, the audience here that is very hard to do, and you often don't figure that out until many years down the road. So, Alec, you are beyond your years in communication at all levels. So, not only in communication, just shooting it, but you know, in your instruction level. And I was really impressed. And Jack and I are grateful for the instruction you'd given him over the past year. For the audience, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us about Alec, tell us what you're doing right now, and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name's Alec Sailer. I am currently a high-performance golf coach for Altus Performance, specifically now Altus Performance Florida. For those that don't know who or what Altus Performance is, it is a golf instructional academy founded by Cameron McCormick. I came on board with them now just over a year ago, May of last year. And when I originally came on board, I was based out at Trinity Forest in Dallas, Texas, which is where you and I met. Spent close to 8-9 months there. Then Cameron and Corey Lumberg approached me with a prospect of coming out to Florida, helping them open up the first facility outside of Dallas in the U.S. We have a couple of facilities out in France and China, but this is where we are now in Orlando, and it's getting a little hot.
Well, you're not missing anything here because the heat here has been insane.
Yeah.
I think you remember last summer, you're like, whoa, this was not in the brochure. What happened here?
being a West Coast kid, born and raised, coming now all the way to the East Coast, it's definitely a different animal, different
It's
animal. But
I grew up in the East Coast, so hot, and it wasn't Florida, but it's due north in the New York, New Jersey area. And I tell people the difference between that hot and this hot is that in that hot, you need multiple shirts
yeah,
because they soak. The humidity is just absolutely, you're shore based there, so you're getting that humidity coming in off the
yeah.
ocean.
It's just it's absolutely miserable standing there on the tea deck. I mean, it's great. I'm having a great time doing it, but then after about hour 4 or 5, when I've barely moved and I'm covered in sweat, and my client's just dripping. I mean, it's just it's a tough time.
It
It's a
is.
tough time.
Alec, the thing that really struck me and really wanted I really wanted to have you on an episode was because some of the things I already know about you. Learned about your upbringing, learned about your parents, about how you got into golf and at your journey. So I want you to reel us all the way back, as far back as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, where did this presence and this communication style outside of your golf ability, because we're going to get into that too, your journey there, how did this stuff start forming? What were your surroundings like? How did you grow up, and where were your early influences?
Yeah. So I think the best way to start that conversation is to kind of give you an idea of how I got into golf, because golf is, and I mean this in its most purest sense, golf is my life. I'm one of the few people that can probably say that they've been playing golf longer than they haven't been playing golf.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, I got started in golf when I was 3 years old. My dad played collegiately all the way back in the 80s for Cal Lutheran.
Oh, wow.
His dad got him involved very young. So naturally, my dad was like, well, let's get Alec a Fisher Price plastic golf set and let's see what happens. And from my earliest memories, I remember being in our little front yard area, all the way back in California, where I'm originally from, and I was just chipping these little plastic golf balls from one side of the lawn to the other, and that's kind of where the addiction started. And I tell my dad this even to this day now, 30 years later, of he got very lucky because it became the best form of babysitting, and he got very lucky because when it came time to babysit me, he just told my mom that, hey, we're going to the range, and he'd plop me down and I would
Ah,
just watch the golf balls
it's great.
fly. So I got started in golf very young, took a natural ability into it, started playing competitively right about 9, 10 years old, playing in the junior tournaments in Northern California. And then when we moved from California, Las Vegas, played high school golf, had aspirations of playing college, but didn't quite work out. Certain things happened in life that kind of derailed that to some degree as well. And once I got done competing, when I was 18, I took about a 2 year break from golf, period, just because I kind of got to a point where I think most athletes get to when they throw a lot into it or into their respective sport and they don't quite see the return on investment, which I did. Um, I just got burnt out. So took 2 years off. I met a great group of friends who I'm still friends with today, going on 15 years now, and found passions for other things, but always knew that golf was something I needed to do. Um, in whatever fast that was going to be. And luckily enough, found out that in Las Vegas, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which I went to and graduated from in 2021, had a golf management program.
Right.
So kind of looked up the history of that and saw, hey, there was an opportunity to coach. I was like, well, the golf swing is something that I've been around for a long time, especially at that point. Knew a little bit, nothing crazy, but I was like, who knows? I like people. I'm a very personable person. Who knows? Maybe this could be something I want to do. And from the moment I stepped foot on campus and started learning more about the golf swing, I mean, it was opening up Pandora's box, so to speak. So that's kind of where we got started in golf. Now, you asked me about my upbringing and how I attained these skills and what I was surrounded by. To be completely honest, Vic, it's all my parents. I mean, I grew up in a very loving household. I have the most wonderful mother and father that I could ever ask for. Unfortunately, I am my mother's son, and I'll extrapolate that a little bit later. But a lot of kind of the personality I get is from her, mixed in with my dad. My mom is fire, my dad is ice,
Okay.
and I'm kind of like a combination of those. And sometimes the fire will win, but I have that ice in me to kind of
It's
weather
the
the storm.
perfect
And
blend because as long as you can call on either, and use
Yeah.
one to calm the other, then it's a formidable mix. Some people only have one. Hey, I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
tap into something real quick. So, you got the Fisher Price clubs in your hands.
Hmm.
And I have come across over the years, not recently, but this was when I was introducing my own kids to sports. My girls were competitive cheerleaders, and if you know
Hmm.
anything about the competitive cheerleading world, it's 6, sometimes 7 days a week in the gym.
Hmm.
It's trips. It's like playing select baseball or being on a mini tour or something like that.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's big. My son played a little bit of football, but he was a skateboarder as a young kid, so nobody had it wasn't organized, but that kid probably spent more times on four wheels than you could possibly imagine. He had a lot of passion for it. But the thing that I was watching around me with sports, I live in a town here in Texas where football is life and
Hmm.
kids start very, very young.
Hmm.
And, I was worried um, that I would run into a spot where I'd burn them out. That I would just burn them out. And you see a lot of kids start very, very early and they peak very soon. What was that process like for you? Do you think there are any pros and cons of, obviously you got the greatest golfer in the world who was on, Merv Griffin when he was 5 and he turned out to do amazing things. So
Hmm.
there are absolutely the examples of, starting early and turning into a giant. What are your views on introducing young folks to the game? So maybe you got some parents who are listening out there. They're going, "Yeah, I'm gonna,"
Yeah.
because listen, as parents, we want our kids speaking 7 languages by the time they're 4. Like we want them to overachieve.
Exactly.
It's hard. So, what was that like for you? What were you feeling like back then? Did it ever feel like work and not passion? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, at no point ever growing up did I ever feel like work. My I actually had the privilege of asking my dad this question of like, especially when I started getting into coaching, of like, hey, how did you coach me? And he said a lot of it was easy because he never really needed to ask me to go out to the range. It was almost always me going, hey, when asking mom, when's dad getting home from work? Because we
Yeah.
got daylight.
Yeah.
We're burning daylight here. I want to get out there. Um, but I just remember my dad making it fun, going out there, creating little games
I love it.
to play. I also just enjoyed spending time with my dad. So that was kind of a large part of it. It was like, hey, I can kind of get away from mom who's making me do all the chores and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go hit balls with dad or maybe even go walk night. So um, I think if there's any parents listening and you want to get your kids involved, whether it's golf or sports in general, first and foremost, you have to understand kids have to associate the sport they're playing with fun. Okay, if they don't associate it with fun, there's a very strong likelihood that they won't play it long term.
This is
They
important.
may play it because you're forcing them to go or you want them to do things, right? But you have to keep in mind that you can't impart your dreams onto your kids. You have to let them kind of come up with their own. Now, my dad got lucky being a golfer that his kid wanted to play golf. But with that being said, I played golf since I was 3 years old, but I did everything else. I did martial arts, I played football, I played basketball. I tried to play baseball, but because I played so much golf, I couldn't play baseball. I play a mean first base, but if it came time to actually hit the baseball, oh
Yeah.
boy, it was either
Yeah.
pop fly balls or strikeouts. So
The
there was
ball's
there
too
was no
high
in
off the
between.
ground.
Yeah, exactly. I actually remember it was funny.
Yeah.
My dad tells me that in a little game, I remember being very young and telling. He said that I asked the pitcher if he could roll it on the ground because I had a better chance. So,
It's
um,
great.
but like I said, for any sport, let make it fun and kind of let them come to you about it, right? There's an expression that I use a lot, and my dad even told me, which is you can only lead a horse to water, you can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
Well, lead them to the water, and if they want to drink, then run with it, right? But my dad always told me too, no matter what I wanted to do, if this is what you really want to do, then go all in.
Yeah.
We'll support you. And luckily, I had the support behind me to do those things. But I think first and foremost, you have to make it fun. And that's even now speaking to it as a coach on the other side, where now my job is when I get kids in, you know, yeah, kids do a lot of things wrong when it comes to the golf swing. I mean, how could they not? Right. But
Mhm.
my job isn't to necessarily make them hit the ball perfectly right now. It's just to get them to associate, hey, golf is fun. So that way, later on, when they get the spark or the itch, as we like to call it, to go
Yeah.
play,
Yeah.
you oftentimes you don't even need to ask them. They're going, "Hey, when's my next lesson? When can I go practice? When can I go play? Hey, I want my friends to start doing this." Right? So it's almost like light the spark and let them add the fuel later.
This is, you see, I've got my chin on my hands and I'm staring straight into the monitor here because my mind is I'm 100 yards under the earth right now, just thinking about really where this goes. It's not just kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had friends and myself even. I've walked off golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm not a pro. I've got nothing at stake in the game. Right? If I go out and shoot a bad score, I go home and eat. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
lose a sponsorship. I don't lose a student. Nobody's looking at me to go low in order to drive my life. It's just 100% ego. Um, I'll leave the name out. My son went out and played golf with a buddy, snapped his 60-degree right over his knee yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully my one of my best friends, if not my best friend out there, he's very serious about the game. He's been playing a long
Mm-hmm.
time. He's good. He's a good golfer, but he lets himself get rattled too much. And I'm hoping he hears this because the thing that I've learned early on when I started playing golf, Alec, you've gotten to know me over the past year, right?
Absolutely.
I've got, qualities and bad sides, but I am a very disciplined guy when it comes to accomplishing the things I want to
100%.
accomplish. I lay out a plan, I think it through, I don't take the first draft, I run it out. Um, and then my wife will always say, "Oh, everything you do is you do it to the end, blah blah, and you're so
Mm-hmm.
obsessed." And I say, "Oh no, 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 I'm not obsessed. I'm goal oriented." But I applied that to golf when I first started playing. And Alec, I would go out and have the worst time. I'd be
Yeah.
miserable. I mean, and I forgot to make it fun. Well, fortunately for me, I could have used this conversation about 15 years ago but I'm happy to get it and I'm happy for people to hear it here because this goes beyond kids. Listen, 1% of 1% of golfers got a shot at even competing in a tournament. Okay. Let alone anything else. Everybody else is creating camaraderie with friends, having a good time. And I'm not saying don't work on your handicap, and I'm not saying play it in the club championship or go out and play in an outing and have a good time, but golf is a lot of fun. There are very few sports where you get to have camaraderie for 4+ hours with people,
Mm-hmm.
where you get to challenge yourself against the course and other people if that's the way you're playing. But I would say the majority of people that I've come across have forgotten the fun part.
Oh yeah.
That's why I love going to the range. Hey, 10 balls to that green. Most wins, closest to the pin wins 2 points. Hey, that little net out there, creating these games. But I mean, I love it that we're 15 minutes into the podcast and you've already dropped the pearl of wisdom down that goes beyond kids, because this is the big thing. You got to keep the fun in the game. I'm going to reel us back a little bit, and only because
Yeah.
I know a story about your mom. I've heard a lot about your dad,
Okay.
and I'd love to hear, because you have this great discipline and fire, so I've heard about the ice. I want to hear about the fire.
Oh man, man, that had to. I could probably spend a whole other pod just talking
All
about
right.
the amazing woman that is my mom. So, my mother, to give you a quick backstory on her, she is the daughter of a Marine drill sergeant and another Marine who has top secret clearance and fought in Vietnam.
Wow.
Okay, my grandmother, who recently passed, was a drill sergeant. My grandfather had fought in Vietnam and had top secret clearance. So, needless to say, she learned how to rule with an iron fist.
Okay.
Okay. But the most important thing you know about my mom, kind of like you, is she's very goal orientated. She's very specific. It is black or white. There is no gray. There was no skirting the lines in the Sailor household, right? And so my mom was the fire, dad was the ice. Good cop, bad cop, right? But my mom instilled in me, and I do have a younger sister, but she instilled in both of us that you know you you operate under boundaries. But you have to be able to establish what those boundaries are first. But once you establish your boundaries, those are your guidelines. And if you start to stray outside the guidelines, well, there's consequences for every decision that you make. Now, she was going to let us make whatever decision we were going to make, but she always said, "Hey, You know, there's consequences, both good and bad. So, uh, my mom was just pure powerhouse of a
Right.
woman. I mean, she was incredible. I mean, now me being who I am and having a lot of her genes, I pressed the envelope a few times, like to push her buttons. She pushed
Right.
right back. So we butted head at times.
Okay.
But the biggest thing about my mom was passion. She achieved a lot with very little education in her life. She ended up working to before she retired. She worked for the state of California in the correctional system. She started off as a cop, worked her way up to about third in command by the time she retired.
Wow.
And my mom was the type of lady where, and I knew this because of a few bring your child to work days of my mom. You either liked her, you hated her. There was no in between.
Okay.
So, but she had a lot of passion, and for me, that bled into, and it still does bleed into everything that I do. Right. That's why I took golf and wanted to go to the nth degree with it because of the passion. So that's kind of where I get the fire. So the snap and the 60-degree wedge,
Yeah. You
been
got
there, done
you got a
that,
bunch of
because
snap shafts.
the passion runs deep.
Yeah.
And what do you mean? I did everything that I thought I could do. I did my routine. I tried everything and I executed what I thought was going to be the right shot. Ball goes sideways. Well, it's the club's fault, snap, you know? And I can remember countless conversations or with my dad going, "Hey man, what are you doing?" It's like, "Well, Dad, sorry, I saw red." You know? But then he'd turn
Yeah.
around and we'd be at dinner having the same conversation with my mom with stuff that happened at work. She goes, sorry, Paul. My dad's name is Paul. Sorry, Paul, I saw red. I'm like, there we go, Dad. She's the reason why I
Yeah.
snapped at
Yeah.
60. There we
Yeah.
go.
Don't blame me.
Right? Sorry, Mom, I'm still blaming you.
Your mom plays golf, right?
Well, the whole family did. The
Okay.
whole family did. My parents' first date was on a golf course, at the golf course that my grandmother worked at.
Wow.
So I would challenge you to find another person who was more predisposed to play
I was
golf
going to say you're
than myself.
multi-generational golfer.
Yeah, and then my dad's dad played golf. His brothers, my uncles, play golf. My whole mom's side plays golf. I mean, it was, bless you, but
Thank you. I got a
it
good
was
mute button here.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, golf is a very big thing in the Sailor household. And now, anytime I go back home to Las Vegas, one of the first things that goes is, "Hey, tea time's this time. Here we go."
You're very lucky. When I grew up in New York and Brooklyn. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, I didn't come across a lot of golf courses, but when I did, I remember the first time I was saying, "Wow, what's that? What's that? Is that a park?" My dad said, "No, that's a golf course." And I go, "Wow, what is golf?" He's tried to explain to me. He goes, "Golf's for rich people." He said.
Yep.
So immediately in my brain, you know what that did? I wasn't eligible.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to get
Yeah.
exposed to it. And my dad was an amazing guy. He exposed us to a lot of other stuff, but they were his interests. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
happens. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't grow up in an area where I had access to golf.
Yeah.
I just heard Bernard Langer yesterday in an interview talking about how long he's been in golf and, where he grew up and he was on playing golf and people looked at him and, "You playing what? What? We have a golf team. There's golf." Like
Yeah. Oh
nobody
yeah.
even knew what the heck he was doing. He's like, "Yeah, this has been,
Yeah.
a beautiful life for me."
My dad told me that when he was growing up, that he was the only person in his high school with a set of golf clubs.
Wow.
And even for myself, not so far removed from being in school, I remember in middle school, I was the same way. I went to a private Christian school in California. I was the only person in that entire school. I think there was about 700 kids that even played golf or even had a set of golf clubs.
No
So
kidding.
I completely agree with what you're saying there.
Hey, let me ask you a question. So we're talking
Yeah.
about this fire, snapping clubs,
Hmm.
making it fun. Tell me how the fire has worked. Let's first start with how it's worked against you.
Yeah.
Give me some backstories. What happened in a competition? What happened in your practice? Like how did it not bring you to a spot where maybe you could have been at your best?
Um, I have a really great story. It happened in a tournament when I was playing in Northern California. Um, the temper was something I've always battled. My dad always saw it. He always told me, "Hey man, you gotta learn how to reel it in." I'd go, "Well, how do I do that?" He goes, "I you got to figure that out yourself." And the time it got the worst, I was playing an event. I was actually up near the lead. I think I was through 12, 13 holes. I think it was like one or two over, probably 3 or 4 shots out of first. And I remember I get up to a hole and I still fight this tendency to this day, but I tend to fight a little bit of a left ball. Used to be a massive hook when I was younger. Now it's just kind of more of just a straight pull, but it still goes too far left. And it reared its ugly head when I was having a decent round going, and in came the bad thoughts, the bad self-talk of,
Mhm.
you suck, this always happens, why do I put all this work in if it never shows up? Poor me, why me, this, that, and the third. And I remember I went over to the side of the tee box and I just went to town. I just went to town on my driver, just beating it to death, right?
Into the
Saw my
ground.
red. Oh yeah, saw my red, dug my hole, and my dad looked at me, didn't say a word, and walked off. And he just went and sat in his car in the parking lot, and I
Wow.
knew right then and there that it was going to be. We had an hour drive home. Unfortunately, that was going to be a very quiet car ride, and it was. My dad didn't say a word to me the entire ride. We got home, dinner was made, didn't look me in the eye, didn't talk to me at all, and he didn't talk to me until about 8 p.m. when he finally came in my room and he said, "Look, son," he goes, "I understand you want to play well. I understand that you take this game very seriously." And he's like, "And no one wants you to play better than I do." He's like, "However, this attitude of yours will be the reason why you and I won't play golf in the future if you keep this up."
Wow.
And he walked right out. And that was the first kind of realization. It took me a lot longer, unfortunately. I had to mention that. It did take me a lot longer. But that was kind of the first realization of like, oh, crap. Like, this is something I really have to deal with, where this bonding moment that I had built with my dad at that point going on 10 years, I could potentially lose just because of how I was acting on a golf course. Right. And I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about golf is all the similarities you can pull in life. Right. And
Yeah.
you think about all the times where, not on a golf course, but just in day-to-day conversations you have with people or driving in a car, all these times you kind of let the beast out a little bit, and consequences happen, both good and bad.
Yeah.
So, um, growing up too, and then playing in high school, I had gotten word that I was kind of not fun to play with when I was playing bad because, you could see from 5 miles away exactly how I was playing. And they
Opposite
didn't.
of what Earl used to say about Tiger.
Mm-hmm,
Earl was
mm-hmm.
quoted in a book about saying that the thing that made Tiger so special is when he walked off the green, you didn't know if he hit an eagle or a triple bogey. You had no
Yeah.
idea.
You could tell from 5 miles away whether I hit a good shot or a bad shot. And
Yeah.
then if I was coming off a green, you could tell what score I made on the hole. And unfortunately, that didn't take me till college to really understand, because when I decided I wanted to go into coaching, my dad told me, hey, listen, you are becoming a brand. If you go into coaching, you're going to be less Alec the golfer. You're going to be more Alec the coach, and that's a brand.
Yeah.
And he's like, based on the brand you currently have, son, he's like, I wouldn't even pay you $1 to take a lesson. And I was like, whoa.
I got to meet your dad someday.
Oh yeah,
And your
he's a
mom.
great dude. He's a great dude. But the thing that really made it snap for me, he's like, look, son, somebody's always watching. Somebody's always watching. You don't know when or where they are, but somebody's always watching. So keep that in mind. And I remember the first tournament I ended up playing in college at UNLV. I heard those words ring loud and clear. I was like, you know what? Let's try. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
I had already beaten that horse to death of hitting bad shot, getting mad. And I was like, you know what? Let's try and be a brand. Let's try and be Alec the Pro at that time, trying to become a PGA member. And played the whole 18 holes. It was just a single 18-hole one-day event. Played the 18 holes, shot even par, got like second or third. I was like, huh. I actually don't feel bad. I hit some bad shots,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel bad. It felt very calm. I was like, huh, okay. Maybe there's something to this. And then over the course of my 4 years there, I really worked to hone that skill of going, hey, anytime I step foot onto a golf course, no matter if it's with my friends who are now currently getting into golf 15 years later, or I'm playing with my dad, or I'm playing with clients now, or if I'm even playing by myself, there's always somebody watching.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I want, especially for the goals and aspirations I have for my career, the last thing I want is for my attitude to not pay myself dividends in the future, because future Alec will be very upset at the decisions that current Alec is making.
Hey,
And the first,
let me tie that into a bigger lesson in life.
yeah,
Okay. Let's talk about that golf and that behavior. So I play a decent amount of golf for business,
hmm
social outing, charity outings, etc. Don't you think that the way you respond to a problem and somebody goes absolutely ape shit, don't you think is that the guy I want to do business with?
yeah,
How's this guy or gal going to respond to, and on both sides, maybe not enough edge, but definitely too much edge. Like, how are they going to
hmm
respond in a business crisis? How are they going to respond when the chips are down? I mean, there is always somebody watching your
hmm
behavior and your brand, and you could happen on the golf course, it could happen off the golf course. I tie it back to alcohol as well. Everybody says, "Oh, he's a mean drunk. Oh, he's a happy drunk." No, 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 no.
hmm
What you have there is the core of the person,
hmm
because alcohol is the greatest filter remover of what's going on inside you that
couldn't
was
agree
ever
more.
created. And so when people get, really angry and belligerent when they're drinking, they have just enough to keep it together during the
hmm
day. And when they are all smiley and happy, and because there are certainly people like that, I happen to be one of them. Um, it's sort of the nature of who you are and what you are. This is a big deal, and I will tell you, I still believe that there's a gap in this instruction, not only in golf, but everywhere in life.
hmm
Everywhere in life, and this is emotional intelligence. And the problem with it in golf, especially in junior golf, and this is where you see people sort of differentiate athletically. The ability to take feedback, the ability to handle adversity, the ability to handle hardship, loss, all of these things that psychologically crush you, especially in boys with that frontal lobe development,
Correct.
now going off into 24, 25, 26. Recent studies even say that it could be as much as 30. And that's
hmm
reasoning, logic, decision making, emotion, all happening in the frontal lobe. It's so hard. I mean, these people, these guys and gals that go pro at 19 years old, they have to have an advanced frontal lobe development.
Yeah.
There's definitely going to be some biological science to that, because you can't compete and win without the ability to manage your emotions. You just
Yeah.
can't anywhere.
Well, I think you're touching on, an important topic there too, because it's something that I've seen, even the difference between when I was young and competing to even kids now. With the advent of social media, it's almost like the air around competing, especially in golf, is, you have to be good even younger. So that means we need better coaching. We need more funds to get better coaching. We need
Yeah.
the best equipment, the best clothes, the best memberships, right? And it's almost like, okay, well, now, hey, you take 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boy or girl, doesn't
Mhm.
matter. You take this kid and go, hey, we've just dumped all of this funding into you. Now you need to go off and do something with it.
Yeah.
So you're almost creating this burden or this air of, hey, you can't fail. So now when you do fail, which by the way, golf, all you do is fail.
Yeah.
Like that is literally
Yeah.
golf in a nutshell. It's just a 4.5 hour adventure of making every single mistake you can make and then trying to put the lowest score down that you can. So you create this mystique of, hey, you can't fail because we're doing this for you. How dare you? Right. And now you take that, and let's say they are in that environment or in that competitive arena for another 6 years, coming out of high school, trying to go in college. You now have this individual who has been told for forever that, hey, I can't fail. I have to work harder. I have to do all these things that I can't possibly let anybody down.
Alec, I'm going to, with not only will I constantly thank you for coming on this episode, I'm going to create a little reel of shorts about a lot of these things. And I would recommend that when I put this reel together, that it is something you make all your junior golfers' parents watch, and the junior golfer,
Oh
before
yeah,
they step foot in your bay,
I
before you
appreciate
look at
that.
one swing. And I'll tell you why. I had my nephew in the shop,
Yeah.
and I still see a lot of potential of him in him. He's a great kid. Um, I wanted it so bad for him. I'm sitting here thinking, how much pressure did I put on him, striving for discipline, perfection, that
Mhm.
I might have sucked some of the fun out of it. You know,
Mhm.
um, something I'll talk to him about this summer for sure. But he's a great kid. But
Yeah.
I think this is so important. These aspects of the pressure, the investment.
Yep.
Listen, golf's not cheap.
Mhm.
Okay. Memberships are expensive. The equipment's expensive. The gear's expensive. Shit, the golf
Yeah.
balls are $55 a dozen, for a professional grade golf ball. And if you're competing, you want every little edge you could possibly nudge
Mhm.
in: the clubs,
Mhm.
the balls, the equipment, the shoes, right? What the right fitting glove. All of these things are like a millimeter of a piece of the win, and you
Yes.
want to try to get every one of them you can that you can control, because when you get on the course, there's going to be a lot of things you can't: the height of the grass, the wind, the dew, the green cut, the sun, all of these things. Yeah, you should, because I'll tell you what, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna translate this into other areas of business, because a lot of times when you work on projects in business, you automatically start with, holy shit, this is what happens if I fail. And
There
so I've spent millions of dollars on this project. It's got to go in on this date, blah, 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 blah. And I've been involved. You're eliciting so many of my own emotions of seeing these projects where
Mhm.
multi-millions of dollars are spent, and the delivery date and the quality was of such paramount importance that you were kind of locked up in it before it even started.
Mhm.
So it's a good grab there. Hey, I want to flip the switch, and I
Yeah.
want you to. We talked about fire, and we talked about where it goes bad, and I want to give where it goes good an equal amount of time if we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So with that being said, knowing that, I have that fire, the passion in me, one thing you have to know about me is there are often times, and I'm currently in one of those situations where I'll bite off a little bit more than I can chew. But it's good because it is that quality or that trait has really helped me get to where I am today at such a younger age
Yeah.
or younger point in my career. And that is that there has never been a decision that I've made that didn't have some amount of risk, right? Luckily, and unfortunately, I know this isn't some people's situation, but luckily I've had a great support group that where they said, hey, listen, if you're going to go all in, don't hold anything back, don't second guess. And so with that, that's the reason why in the last year I've moved twice. I moved from Arizona to Texas, Texas to Florida, all in the pursuit of trying to set my future self up for success,
Yeah.
right? There was a very popular speech that Matthew McConaughey gave where, who's your hero? You know, well, his hero was him in 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm always chasing my future version of myself 5 years down the line, right? So if you operate under that mindset and go, okay, well, how do I get there and how do I get to where I want to be in 5 years? I have no idea. All I know is that that if I put one foot in front of the other, and as long as I don't sacrifice my core values, I'll eventually get there, right? But that fire, that ambition, rather, you know, sometimes in life you have to take a leap of faith. You come to a fork in the road, you have to make one decision or the other, right? For me, that was deciding, hey, I know I want to be a golf coach. I need to start actually coaching to improve the skill. Well, how am I going to do that? So, being a PG member, we have access to a job portal to where I can look for jobs and kind of see what's going on. And so I
Mhm.
found the job at Altus and I said, you know what? I read through the job description. Well, I kind of do some of the stuff that they're looking for already, but I'm way underqualified. Why not? So I threw my hat in the arena, um, got a hold of people I need to get a hold of, tidied up the resume to highlight some of the coaching stuff I had been doing in Arizona at a private course as an
Yeah.
assistant professional. And said, who knows? It could be me. I interviewed very well. Let's see what happens. Lo and behold, ended up getting my first phone call interview with Corey Lumberg. Had a 30-minute chat with him, and then I had about an hour and some change chat with Cameron McCormick and another one of our coaches up in Frisco in Texas, Nick Dunn. And that was in November. Then I didn't finally get told I was being hired until February, almost March. So
Wow.
for about 3 or 4 months, I stewed, going, "What am I doing? I shouldn't have done this. I should have gone a safer route. Like, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. My seasonal job's coming to an end in April. I haven't heard anything. What's going on?" And then finally get a phone call saying, "Hey, we'd love to have you come on board."
You know,
Right?
I heard some interesting little quotes, and I'm going to try to get them right. And I've tucked them away in my pocket, and I think about them often. Faith. You said you got to have
Hmm.
faith. Oh, my thumb came up there. Um, Faith is believing in something you're not really sure is actually true.
Hmm.
Um, Hustle. What is the difference between work and hustle? And I spoke to a CEO of a company, Courtney Myers, and she said hard work is something that she believes is something people do knowing that there's an outcome planned. Hustle is the hard work you do not knowing what the outcome is going to be. And there's a distinct difference between the two of them.
I couldn't agree more.
And then lastly, there are a couple other things, and then I'm going to tell you a short story. One other thing is about risk. And it was an entrepreneur thing I was watching, and they said, "Hey, if you're not taking a risk, if you're not evaluating your business or your business plan, and if it's free of risk, it's not a good business plan. You're not going to win. You know, because if it were safe and predictable, everybody would be doing it.
Correct.
Every single person would be doing it. So a good business plan has an element of risk, and the more you take, the more of possible return there's going to be. I um I was recently talking to somebody about my own career. I got into my own business, got a good start, joined up with a guy I've been in business with, who I've known for a while. It was 53 before I got to leverage my entrepreneurial bug. Haven't looked back since. Actually, I was 53, and up until that time, I had thought that the way you migrated from really a job or a corporate position was much like a relay race would be run. You ever notice some
Yeah.
people run a relay race, and right as the baton is passed, both runners are running at full speed. So it's like, and you just go and
Yeah.
you slide from one thing to the next, and the prior runner fades off, and the next runner really kicks into the next gear. And so I was giving somebody career advice about going from their corporate gig to a more entrepreneurial gig. And in the middle of the conversation, I realized this is a young person with no family, with no kids, with nothing but opportunity ahead of them. And I said, "Hey, I just gave you an old man's advice. I'm going to take that back." I said, "I just gave you the advice of somebody who's got a lot of responsibilities. It's kind of the thing that, kind of held me back. I got kids, I got food, I got mortgage,
Hmm.
I got college, I got all these things." I said, "Right now you're in a position to take the training wheels off,
Yep.
not even knowing if you could ride the bike. If you're going to take a risk, do it right now because you're going to win. Dive in head first, dive in head first." And I took it back, and this is all in the all in the span of about 30-minute conversation. And so for you, man, the fact that you've picked up and moved twice in a year, you're doing your thing down there, Alec. This is your time. This is
Oh,
when you do it.
100%.
This is when you set up the rest of your life and you set up your future. So we started talking about. Uh, we were talking about EQ. I want to go on to
Mhm.
routines for a second,
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
absolutely.
Um, Anytime you hear the success stories of people who are entrepreneurs or CEOs or anybody who's received some financial success in their life or even professional success,
Yeah.
whether it be sports or anything, there's so much in a routine. I want to talk about the golf routine because I think there's a story in here that's going to translate into everything else about a routine that people have. Talk to me about when you talk to clients, students, about a routine. How important is it developing one? What are you trying to accomplish? And what is the reason you have routines in golf?
Yeah. Simplest way to answer that question of why you need a routine is and to use a golf pun, sorry in advance, but the routine is what tees you off to be able to execute what you know you can do when it matters most. Okay. So here's a better analogy. Human beings are creatures of habit or creatures of a routine. Everything we do is a routine. So think back to the times where, you're driving to work and, oh man, Apple Maps didn't tell me there was construction here. Now I have to deviate. Oh crap. Now I can't go to my coffee spot in the morning. I can't stop and see this thing. I can't grab this. Right. So you can see the snowball starting to
Yeah.
become bigger. So if you translate that back into golf and go, hey, whether you're trying to make a putt for your lowest career round, whether you're in the first hole of a big event, or, one of the first times you're even playing golf around people, or like in your case in the business end where you have a very important business meeting on the golf course that you were told, hey, listen, you need to go out there and you need to close this deal, right? That's your natural routine getting thrown off because there's some element of risk involved. So the routine comes into play of like, hey, this is the calming of the waves of I'm going to become uh for lack of a better word, a slave to my routine, right? And if I do this routine, then I can let the subconscious take over and do what I've done several times before. Right. So that's kind of a long-winded way to say that the routine is what tees you up.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the routine and then you go ahead and execute a bad shot, well, I mean, could have told you that. And I can't tell you how many times, whether I'm talking with people that are playing on mini tours or been playing forever, or people that are just starting, everyone's always looking for, how can I gain that little bit of an edge? And to your point, look at the best players in the world. They never strayed away from the routine. Like Tiger Woods, for example, we'll use him. You could put him on a stopwatch and his routine was the exact same amount of time for every single shot, whether he was going to make the cut or win a major.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not doing the easy things to help you succeed, then we got no chance of the hard things, right?
I'm thinking deeply about it, but I'm going to try to simplify it. We talked about the right gloves, the right balls, the right clubs. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
equipment side of the routine,
Yeah.
meaning, and the way I express that is that, hey, there are certain benefits to gear that's fit for you, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be the shoes, the clubs, right? Any club in the bag, you've all been fit to you at that particular point in time, the way you're swinging, what you're doing, leveraging, all of that. That's sort of I would call that the equipment routine, right? Where there are
Mm-hmm.
known calculations to make to put you in the best possible position. Maybe that increases your chances 1%. Okay. Maybe it's 5 or 10. Don't know what it's going to be on any given day. But when you go into the routine and the shot routine, these are the things that say, I've done this 1,000 times or 100 or 10,000 times, and I just do it the way I've always done it. And then I go execute. And really, it's just execution. It's not making a change. It's like repeating the thing you've done over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over. I've talked to business owners who have been very successful, CEOs of companies who have worked their way up the corporate ladder, and routines translate into business one for one. I mean, there's no difference from the time people get up in the morning to what they do with their morning time. You rarely see somebody who's very successful late.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely, rarely. Um, I'm thinking of artists that start concerts 2 hours later. They're just messed up. But but
There's
they,
always
yeah,
outliers. There's
there's
always
always
outliers.
outliers, but they're rarely late. Why? And routines and schedules are very, very, very important because there's a lot tied to that routine and those schedules. Physical fitness, what they do in the morning, the time of day
Mm-hmm.
they set, the most important meetings. Like me personally, if I have a very, very important meeting, it won't be 4 or 5 o'clock. I just know no matter how much I think I have a game, and sometimes I have to pour it on over a dinner or 4 or 5 at night,
Mm-hmm.
but I know if I'm going to win, I got my best windows between 10 and 2. I'm up, I'm alert, I'm spry. My brain is firing all cylinders.
Mm.
I've had enough sleep, but I'm awake enough, and I've stretched, and the creativity that's popping out of my mind is peak. And then as the day goes on, just naturally because of uh, the way the body is and the mind is, you start draining a little bit. So people think they're
Me?
at the I only sleep 2 hours a night, or I yeah, you're just not going to be at peak performance on that.
Yeah.
You might think you are, but you're not. And so in golf, I'm trying to tie a lot of this golf thing back into life because they go hand in glove all the
They
time.
really do.
They go hand in glove. Hey, talk to me. I want to peel back a little bit. I can't get your mom out of my mind when it comes to her discipline and fire.
Careful, careful.
Yeah. Um, do you still play with that putter that she used to use? That's still your putter, by the way?
Currently, no, because that putter's been a little mean to me.
Okay.
I still do have it.
Okay.
But it is oftentimes a putter I revert back to
What's
of
in
the
the
four
bag
that I
now?
currently have. Currently, I have a putter that I got in 2018. It's a Gen 2 TaylorMade Spider Tour Edition.
Oh, nice.
And the only reason why is because that's kind of like when I really get into my putting woes, which looking back in my career was always
Yeah.
my issue with putting. I'm not a bad putter, right? I know I'm not a bad putter. I've had
Yeah.
myself evaluated by some incredible putting coaches. I've had myself at the Sam Putt Lab. I know I'm a good putter. I just don't
Yeah.
make putts. I don't make putts because I've told myself for a long time I don't make putts. So I will hardly ever three putt, and
Yeah.
I'll also hardly ever one putt.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, when I start to go too far down the negative hole, I go back to the spider, and we have some very good historical data with that putter. So it kind of helps pull me back and going, hey,
Nice.
idiot, you're not a bad putter. Relax, right?
Yeah.
Calm the waves. You're okay.
Jack's playing that same putter right now. I had it in the garage. That's exactly when I
Yeah,
bought it to tour.
he's a
And
smart man.
he retired the Porsche putter. Yeah. He retired it, and
You know,
he's been playing with
Jack,
that.
Jack, if you end up watching, I've been trying to get you to retire that putter for forever.
Well, it's
It's
got a
not
very
good.
deep sentimental attachment to it.
I
It was
know it's
grandpa's
hard.
putter. I think
It's
that putter
hard.
was actually made by TaylorMade, because we know Porsche didn't
Interesting.
fire it up in a Porsche factory. But hey, I want to switch topics a little bit because I know this is alive in golf, but it's very tied to business. I want to talk about failures and comebacks.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about your experience in failure and how it felt, and what you had to do to make some comebacks. You can give me a story there when you.
God, man, how much
So
time do you have?
we got good time left.
We, I look back at kind of my career, and even though it's still fledgling little baby career, and just even at life as a whole, still a lot more mistakes and failures ahead of me. Um, but I've always been an early subscriber to the fact that if you aren't failing, you're not learning,
Hmm.
right? Success is the thing that we like. It's the thing I'm hoping for.
Yep.
So if I succeed, cool. Then what I did worked. But if I'm not failing, or there isn't some amount of like danger in any decision that I do or any pathway that I come across, then there's no learning opportunity. And looking around at even older generations, right? It's oftentimes when you stop trying to learn things that's when certain bad things happen, right? So, and I knew from an early age that I didn't want that to be me. So early on, I was like, well, and unfortunately, with the hand that I've been dealt as a human being, is I don't learn things easily. If you
Right.
can tell me, hey, Alec, do it this way, I go, awesome. And I don't do it that way. Why? It's just, I don't know. I don't know. I always have to do the thing the hardest way. I'll get the job done, but I'm going to do it in the complete, just most inefficient, hard way possible. And then once I do it that way, I go, oh, okay, you're right. That makes way more sense. And then I'll take it a step further and I'll go, now that I understand it, how can I expedite that for myself?
Yeah.
Right. So I will always throw myself into the fire. Like, for example, taking this job, going full-time coaching, joining Altus Performance, right? Altus deals with tour players, higher elite juniors, higher elite amateurs, things of that nature. Me being used to be one of them, now trying to coach these people. We talked a little bit before we jumped on about imposter syndrome, right? I
Yep.
mean, my first few months there, I felt like a giant imposter. Like, man, how am I the guy that won? right? Like how am I going to rise to this occasion? Like I can already see I was already feeling the failure setting in. I
Huh.
haven't even really coached yet.
Yeah.
And I'm already telling myself, hey, you failed. Now looking back on it a year later, which is it's crazy to say, is what I was feeling in the moment, feeling like an imposter. It's that for me, I should have looked at it as a sense of, hey, I'm in the right spot.
Yeah. 100%.
Because if there isn't something on the line, then it doesn't mean anything to you, right? Like
100%.
I've I've talked to many people that have settled, whether that be relationships, careers, you name it, have settled because it was comfortable, right? Human beings don't want to be challenged, right? But me knowing who I am, knowing that I'm not only going to learn things the hard way, well, I'll be the first one to raise my hand, throw me in, time to sink or swim.
Yeah.
And if I don't, and if I end up sinking, okay, well, next time I get back up in line and throw myself in, I'm going to do something different. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to do something different. And that doesn't work, I'm going to do something different.
You know,
Right now,
there's a
you
good
hope,
story tied to that if you don't mind me jumping in.
yeah, go for it.
I tell folks all the time, and it took me a while to figure this out on my own, but I did figure it out quite some time ago. I am much like you in the sense that I will always raise my hand. Anybody like if people are worried it's not going to happen or not, I got it. I got
Mhm.
it.
I'll
Not
do it.
knowing if I'm going to pull it off.
Oh, yeah.
And
No
early
plan.
on, I would sit in a little pool of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I'm completely uncomfortable. And I went through a number of career changes through my life and had some of those amplified. And the day I realized this, my life forever changed. Some people get in these spots and they're grinding and they get that feeling in their gut like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? I'm not worthy. I'm not going to be able to do this. And you can do two things with those feelings. You can identify them as you're not ready, willing, and able, and you're going to go out with like half a swing or, half the effort or a bunch of uncertainty. Or you could recognize that at that moment, that is the feeling you get when you're about to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it is. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
feeling you get the moment you're about to really push to the next spot
Yeah.
of your education, of your life, of your awareness, of your willingness to take on risk. When I realize that, I welcome that feeling now. And when I
Yeah.
get it, I kind of get giddy. I get pumped up. I'm like, oh shit, I got that feeling again.
Like I said, it
Yeah, this
almost
is
is like
awesome. About to have a breakthrough.
it's that radar in the head. It's the hair standing up on the back of your neck going, hey, like this is okay, cool. This is where I need to be. Like that's for me, that same feeling of going, hey, I'm gonna learn something is me going, oh, this is exactly where I need to be right now because there's going to be something really cool that happens when I come out the other side of this, that I'm going to learn something and I'm going to easily be able to then apply. And then now I've got it.
Yeah.
Then once I got it, on to the next thing.
There's a mastery there of just that process that the
Mm-hmm.
quicker you can I self-identify, turn it into something positive, come out on the other side, you just want to keep doing it. I want to
Oh
go
yeah.
back to the time you was slamming your driver into the ground, your dad walked off. And your dad waited till 8 o'clock that night and bang bang failure, bang 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 bang, you're like really
Oh,
ticked off. How old were you at that time?
I think I had to been right about 13,
Oh,
13 or
okay.
14.
So very
Yeah.
young, very young.
Yeah.
I'm sure the 8 o'clock sit down with your dad or the quick talking to, you didn't come out at 13 and 2 minutes later, like, oh, I got it. And like everything
No.
changed, right?
No.
You
That's
know,
why it took until almost 2021
yeah,
when I was going into college going, oh, I understand it
yeah.
now.
But what did you take from it at that moment? Like you realize now it had an impact on you. How did it impact you
Yeah.
back then?
In my knee jerk reaction was, here we go. I'm getting another talking to,
Okay.
right? Like, oh my God, dad, I get it. Whatever. Um, Hindsight being 2020, looking back on it now, I think the thing I learned in that moment was that the people that I really needed to make happy in my life, the people that I really wanted to not disappoint, weren't concerned about me failing. They were concerned about me being untrue to who I am,
Mm.
right? And I wish I would have learned that sooner, because even outside of golf, that would have just helped me in some relationships and some struggles that I had moving states in between high school and trying to make friends. Now, luckily, I came at the other side and can still say that I'm friends with guys I met and girls that I met 15 years ago in high school. But I wish that if I had not a do-over, but if I could go back in time and talk to 13-year-old Alec now being 30, going, hey, knucklehead, this is a learning moment of
Yeah.
your dad in this specific scenario didn't care that you failed. In fact, if anything, he probably knew you were going to fail, but he was more or less hoping that you just were going to be who you were and be true to who you are in that moment. Right. There was
Yeah.
a phrase that I heard in school that has always kind of stuck with me. And that was, you are who you are when no one's looking.
Yeah.
Right. And when you start to get to, and I'm sure people that play golf can recognize what I'm about to say, when you're playing bad, you are on an island by yourself, alone, with no hope of escape. Doesn't matter who you're currently around, even if you are actually by yourself. Yeah, but you retreat so far down into yourself that no one's watching. Out it comes. Right. And I think that's the lesson my dad was trying to tell me. I'm like, look, man, I don't care that you fail. I'm happy that you're failing because you're going to learn something from it, or hopefully, teenage boys don't really learn a whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, longer way to answer your question, but
No,
yeah,
no, no.
the lesson there.
There's a lot of lessons there. It's good. I wanna take back a little bit. You told me golf's your life, right?
Mhm.
Pull us back in. And for kids coming up, like we got to keep it fun,
Yeah.
right? Got to do all these things, but there is a level of discipline that has to happen. That's just not going to be fun.
Hmm.
Mike Tyson says you got to do things you hate like you love them,
Hmm.
right? That's why he was a great boxer. He's got all these other quotes. He was up at 4 a.m. running because his opponent was asleep still. He felt like he was heading on the edge. So I want to go back to being a parent, and sort of, if anybody's bringing up junior athletes here, because I've got a group of listeners here that are probably bringing up kids and getting them into
Hmm.
sports. Like, how do you manage that line? Because if you're not putting in the work and they don't have the drive and the desire and they don't have the discipline for it, or they haven't found that fifth gear, um, but yet they have all this promise and potential and they say they want it.
Yeah.
How do you work through that? What have you seen? What did you experience on your own?
Yeah. Um, that's a great question, because, if there was a simple answer, we'd have a lot more Tiger Woods out
Yeah,
there,
we sure
wouldn't we?
would.
But I think what it boils down to is, first and foremost, you have to let them come to you with it. Okay. Now, some kids like myself, I told my dad, hey, at 6, 7 years old, this was really fun. I want to do it more. I want to take it a little bit more seriously. Right.
Hmm.
Some kids, they don't do that until way later on in life, or they're now tipping into adulthood. So I think we need to start first is, yes, make it fun, make them enjoy the sport first. I mean, ask yourself, because most of us played sports growing up to some degree.
Okay.
You liked the sport because it was fun, right? So start there. The second thing would be, like, if it was me, right? Like, if I was a parent and I was getting my son or daughter into the game, and they said, hey, I want to take this a little bit more seriously. I want to do this a little bit more. I want to maybe pause some of the other stuff that we're doing on the side. Is have a conversation with them, treat them like an adult, and go, okay, cool. Listen, we'll do it. We'll move mountains for you, but understand that we're going to enter into some sort of contract.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to enter into some sort of contract where, you know, we'll take you to practices. We'll get you outfitted. We'll do everything we can. We'll find you coaching if needed. We'll do all these things for you, but understand that, again, there's consequences for decisions you make. So if you decide that, hey, I don't want to necessarily put in the work, or I don't want to do these things, or I don't want to listen to, whether it be me, the parent in the scenario, or even your coach, depending on what sport you play, understand, okay, now we tip into the consequences being, we're going to start to pull you back from a little bit and really see and test, hey, how much does this mean to you?
Right.
Now, in doing so, you may find that this actually wasn't the thing that they wanted to do. They wanted to do something else.
Okay.
But I think your job as the parent is to go, okay, well, this is what you want to do. What is it that you want to do? All right. And assuming you can have the funds to do it, well, let them try, because kids are very experimental,
Yeah.
right? They're taking in all of these stimuli and they're trying to process. Now kids today have more stimuli than ever before. But I think if you just have them enter into some sort of contract, right? Like, hey, listen, we'll do this for you. You kind of meet us there a little bit.
Yeah.
And if
You got to do
y-
these
if
things,
100%,
especially in
100%. But I think
golf.
ultimately too,
It's so
don't
expensive.
yeah.
You know,
Now,
you can throw up
the
a
where I
rim and
where
shoot
I'll
hoops in your
counter you
drive.
that.
What's that?
One sec. I'll counter you a little bit on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Is yes, it's expensive, but there's more avenues now to find really good equipment for cheap. And I think the issue there is that there's just been a lack of education from the golf industry. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not the golf
Well, it's
industry,
not
but
the
just
equipment I think is expensive. Like, let's use my nephew as an example. The
okay.
only access he has to a range is an outdoor range in the nets in his area. It's got the absolute worst golf balls ever created. They were probably bad 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The place is covered in dirt. It's one of these places where the owner of the property is trying to sell the whole thing. So the owner of
Mm-hmm.
the golf thing is just
Yeah.
like, I'm not putting a nickel into it. He's got access to a decent golf course, public, but it costs every time he steps, costs money every time he
Mm-hmm.
steps on it. So practicing, um, like if you were not a member of a club that had a
Mm-hmm.
very good practice
Yeah.
facility, is difficult. So yeah, you can get cheaper equipment, especially with used clubs and garage sales and things. I mean, there's a couple you watch on YouTube that go around buying used clubs and they find great stuff really cheap. Unlike basketball, I could put up a backboard and a rim
Mm-hmm.
over my garage door, put it up at 10 feet, and if the driveway's flat, I can shoot hoops all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball, I don't know what a basketball costs these days. Pro one is likely less than $100,
Yeah.
and it's just different, the access to it. That's why I say, yeah, it's expensive, but at the end of the day, if you're bringing your kids to compete in any sport at any higher level than recreational ball, they're time. I mean, it sometimes
Oh,
takes the
yeah.
family time. I had a friend who the son played baseball and he played in select leagues, and every single weekend they traveled somewhere. My nephew,
Mm-hmm.
my nephew Matthew, he plays D1 lacrosse. But he played as a little kid. I mean, my brother and my sister-in-law, every weekend were 3, 4, 5, 6 hour drives somewhere
Mm-hmm.
for weekend tournaments and then practice. And then he went to Seton Hall Prep and he played there. And it's, driving to school until the time he had his
Mm-hmm.
license, pick him up, like, then practice in the games and all the stuff. It's a huge commitment on parents, but the kids do have to sign up for the other side of the contract.
100%.
I watched my brother tell my nephew early on, hey, when you're young, it's talent. Some people are more gifted early on and they shine. They're the kid maybe is a little bit more coordinated, better eye-hand coordination, a little faster. But as kids get older, that talent shifts to who's working the hardest. Because if you don't have that other gear to put in the work to achieve, because even the most talented person without work peaks, and the hardest worker can break through the ceiling. So now I love this piece of the contract because the kids have to be accountable.
Correct.
They have to be accountable for the time that the family puts in. Who's the female golfer? I forget her name, but I saw an interview with her. I'll look it up after the show and plug it in. Grew up in Minnesota.
Okay.
Her father and mother turned her living room into an indoor hitting facility at a very big room. They gave up the room because there was no place for her to hit golf balls in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in Minnesota. It's cold, snowing, it was whatever. This is like a life,
Oh, yeah.
sacrifice. This is what parents
Yeah.
do. Now, if she weren't hitting balls every day, working on her swing, working on the thing, they put the couches back in, right?
Absolutely.
They put the couches back
Absolutely.
in. That's the consequence.
And I
Man.
think too, like that's tough, right? If you knowing that you have to lay the hammer down, so to speak, if you notice that, hey, your kid's not necessarily putting in the work in, and you're at this fork in the road of, do I push or do I not? Like, what do I do? It's where if you lay boundaries, set up a contract, quote unquote, and go, hey, this is now the result of what you aren't doing. Tough,
Yeah.
right? And you also are starting to, whether they know it or not, and they won't know it until they get to my age, but you're starting to lay the foundation for like, hey, you're starting to help them build some better traits longer term, okay, of work ethic, showing up on time, right? Doing the work, right? You mentioned, younger age talent. As you get older, it becomes hard work. I forget who is the original sayer of the quote, but I heard this from a pro that I was working for back in Arizona. He said that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard,
Yep.
right? So that's where if you establish these contracts, right? I mean, heck, you could even go so far as to actually write one out and have
Yeah.
them sign it,
Yeah.
right? Why not? And then show them, hey, you signed, okay?
Yeah.
And it
Reach a
can be
contract.
it's going to be your lowest hanging fruit to get some good, life coaching involved, but then I'll show them, hey, we're going to go as far as you want to go, but you got to meet us halfway.
I have a friend, his name is Tony. His profession he's an executive coach, and we talk about all things personal development, have for decades. And we always kid, little things, big things. That's all we have to say. Little things, big things. How you do the little things is how you can do the big things. And if
Mm-hmm.
there's not a sign, I was working out at a gym here in town. It's called PMT. And it was a gym that was started by a guy named Jarrett Phillips. He's Tyler certified, but he's well beyond. He's just
Yeah.
greatest rotational mind, in improving baseball players and golfers. He runs a great facility. And little plug there for you, Jarrett. But he's had a lot of D1 athletes come through. He's
Yeah.
got pros working out there right now. I won't name the names, but there is a guy who's on the senior tour now, who's a name. He's won a number of times. I'm only saying I want people to go to the gym to,
Mm-hmm.
block out the pros there. There are a lot of guys on tour at this gym and gals. And, but this guy who's playing on the Champions Tour right now, senior tour, was mentoring a young guy in the gym. Very tall, very athletic, committed to a D1 college to play golf, and took an interest in taking him out, sort of giving him an advanced look at what it was like to be on tour and things of the like. And kid was an incredible athlete. He had 130-mile-an-hour driver head speed at his, not at his coming out of his shoes. He was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Controlled.
And he could play. And I asked him once and I said, hey, how's so-and-so doing? He sighs. All the talent in the world, all the God-given physical capability, and even the discipline, but he's still missing one piece. What he goes, just doesn't do the little things right. And I said, what are the little things? He goes, he shows up and his shoes are filthy. And he said, his clubs are dirty. He goes, now as a pro, I don't worry about that. Somebody cleaned my shoes and my caddy was taking care of my equipment and it was pristine. Every
Mm-hmm.
time a golf club was put in
Mm-hmm.
my hand, that club was in the best condition it could be in at the time for me to make a great shot. I didn't have to worry about it. He said, but if this kid right now isn't focusing on the mud out of his spikes and his shoes being cleaned, and he goes, what else isn't he preparing for? What else is he not preparing for? So there are, and this is where I sometimes get caught for being like a maniacal guy. Like I focus on the greatest of minutia just because, I'm the kind of guy, Alec, who when he cleans his garage, he'll take a few steps back and just go, I did that. Just crazy because it's a little sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to go into our last topic here, last
Yeah.
couple bit of wisdom, and my God, I could go for another 2 hours. I'm having such a good
Absolutely.
time.
Me too.
What advice would you give junior golfers? And two-part question: what
Okay.
advice would you give a junior golfer who shows the elements, talent, work ethic, probably emotional, good lead in on the emotional discipline and the emotional intelligence? What would you tell them if you could reel back time and go from your 30-year-old self to your high school self? What were the things you've learned over the last 10 to 15 years that you would pull in that you would give an aspiring D1 golfer with the dreams of becoming pro? What would you tell them right now?
Oh boy. I think for me, if I was going back and telling myself this and or trying to tell other people this, would be you need the right people around you. You need the right people around you. And that comes from not necessarily your parents, but that comes from who you decide you want to associate with. And then on top of that, right? Because if you are dealing with kids that show talent, they probably have some sort of coach or coaching access. You need to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Make sure everyone's on the same page. And the reason why I say that is because using me as an example, I love my friends. I love my friends.
Yeah.
But my friends opened me up to a whole world outside of golf that I didn't necessarily have growing up, where I would rather have hung out with my friends than play golf. Now, to some degree, you need that separation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love my friends to death. But in the same time, if you really truly are trying to go to a higher level and you're trying to become elite, and especially to play on either the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, or whatever tour you decide to play on, there are some inherent sacrifices you will have to make. So you need to surround yourself with people that are in similar buckets, right? They don't necessarily need to be in the golf bucket, but they need to be in similar buckets of trying to pursue things that may lead to things greater than themselves.
Yeah.
So if I could go back in time, would just be, hey man, find a coach that isn't trying to sell me on anything,
With you.
is concerned about my development and who I am, even yes with golf, but even more as a human being.
Sure.
And two, making sure that who I'm hanging around is complementing who I want to be.
Love it.
So I'd answer that
So
question.
that's a great answer. I'm going to leave you with a quote, two of them actually, and then I'm going to thank you and say goodbye. One is, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That just is what it is. So to your point, whether it's golf, whether it's character, whether it's professional success, no matter what it is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. No ands, if, or buts. And this will funnel right into why I love doing these podcasts. The value and quality of your life is comprised of the 10 last conversations and areas of focus that you used your brain for.
There we
And
go.
so I think if you think of those two things, and anybody listening, and you sort of go, all right, let me think about my life, and down those 2 lanes, you're going to go, wow, no wonder why I'm pissed off all the time. And no wonder why I do stupid stuff. Or no wonder
Yeah.
why I'm doing great, because I've got people around me that are lifting me, right? It's really great. So thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this time very much. I could dig into any one of these topics a lot deeper with you. You are a man beyond your years.
Thank you.
Why don't
Thank
you
you.
give the facility down in Florida a little plug? Where are you? How would
Yeah.
people get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, when we first started, I still work for Altus Performance. If you go online and look, you'll see our main location in Dallas, Texas. However, we did open up a brand new facility. It started here April 1st, I believe. And it's located in Orlando, Florida, more specifically at Orange County National. For those that may be familiar with that, that's where they hold the PGA Demo Day, and it's the largest driving range in the nation. It's
Wow.
full 360 degrees. That's where we're located. And if you want to get in contact with me, I'm sure, you know, you can either send me an email to alec@altusperformance.com. Please spell it with ALEC, not ALEX, as most people like to
Yeah.
do,
Okay.
or people at Starbucks. But outside of that, you can always go to our website at www.altusperformanceflorida.com, and you'll see the coaches there alongside myself. And there's a form you can fill in there where you can go a little bit more in depth with kind of what's going on in your game and see how we can help you.
If you want coaching at an elite level and you're listening to this podcast and you live in the Orlando area, use that email address, get on that website, reach out to this guy. He has an amazing ability to teach, to explain concepts in a very simple way, and to get people to perform. He's the nicest guy on the planet. He's very easy to be around. And Alec, thank you for coming on today. I wish you much success in the future, and we'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
Vic. I really appreciate it, man. I
Bye
really
now.
appreciate it.
Bye now.
Bye bye.